Well, thank you and good morning to everyone joining us. We've got a great presentation for you this morning. My name is Scott Hogue. I'm with Public Safety Insight, and I'm really pleased to be the host of this webinar. And I just want to say a special thank you to Samsung for making this possible. They're sponsoring this webinar and have been awesome to put this thought leader together for law enforcement. So special thank you to Samsung, and we'll recognize Keith in just a minute, who is with Samsung and on this webinar today. I want to take just a minute and put my below 100 hat on. Below 100 is a common sense approach to reducing line of duty deaths to a number below 100. And this year, for the first time in a century, we are on track to potentially see line of duty deaths below 100. And there are a lot of things that we can do in law enforcement to try to reduce our risk, and one of them is to participate in good training. And we are in for a treat this morning. I have been talking about Katie Lawson's story for a long time in Below 100, talking about what happened to her and how she survived, but more importantly, of the things that she's done after to ensure that the officer safety and wellness piece of this is taken care of, not only for herself, but for others as she works in her department's wellness unit. So I'm really excited to hear Katie's story today. I'm really excited to hear from Keith Redlin from Samsung about some of the things that Samsung is doing in this space. So I want to just real quickly do an introduction before we turn this over to Katie. And we just have a comment in here about whether this is going to be recorded. Yes, this is being recorded, and we will make this available at a later time for anyone that would like to see it. So first, Katie is a Master Sergeant. She joined the Oklahoma City Police Department in 2006. She's a graduate of the University of Central Oklahoma with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Since her employment with the police department, she's worked in a variety of different areas of her department, such as patrol, vice, crimes against children, mental theft, peer support, impact, and did a short stint with the Oklahoma City DEA office. Katie is a member of her department's crisis negotiation unit and honor guard, and she's currently assigned to the department's wellness unit. So Katie, thank you for joining us. And secondly, I want to introduce Keith Redlin. Keith is the director, the head of public safety sector for Samsung of America, and also an Oakland County Sheriff's Reserve Sergeant. And so I'm pleased to have both of you here this morning to talk about this important topic. So Katie, we're going to start with you and have you just sort of walk us through your horrific story and what happened to you. And so I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you all for having me, first of all, and hello to everybody out there. Just appreciate it. So basically what I'll do, I'll walk you through that night, kind of tell you all about my shooting, exactly how it went down, show you a little video and some crime scene photos, some radio traffic, and then kind of talk about how I got to where I am now. So with that being said, can everybody see my screen up there where the grass is and the house is? Okay, great. Yes, so my shooting that I was involved in happened on August 29th, 2010. So we're going on almost 15 years now. I say sometimes I'm old news, but I still a relevant story. So that evening was a Sunday evening. I had 4 years on the job, so I was a fairly new officer. One of those years being, in training with the Academy FTO program. So really just 3 years on my own. I was off Friday and Saturday for a friend's wedding, so Sunday rolls around. I have to get ready to go to work. Earlier in the day, I was thinking, you know what? I may just take one more day off. I'm tired. I'm new. I have plenty of vacation, maybe just one more day. But in Oklahoma City, just like everywhere else, we're busy on the weekends, especially the summertime. So I thought, nope, I'm not going to make my partners, take my calls anymore. I'm just going to respond to work. So I worked the overnight shift during that time, and our overnight shift was 9:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. We call it third shift. So I reported to lineup around 9:30. Nothing significant happened in lineup. Broke lineup, started my shift, and in about an hour into my shift, I'd already taken 1 to 2 calls, but an hour into my shift, dispatch comes over the radio and says that an Oklahoma County deputy needed assistance on a traffic stop. So that's a different agency, but he didn't have any partners nearby, so he was requesting the Oklahoma City Police Department to assist him. So the call was at Northwest 38th and Miller, and that's kind of what I have up on the screen right there. Where you see the red cars, that's going to be 38th Street, and the other street is Miller. And I remember as I'm going to this call, the dispatcher just says, hey, he needs assistance, but didn't really know why. And I remember looking at the call notes, and it didn't really say why he needed assistance. So I'm kind of going into it blindly, just that I'm helping on a traffic stop. So as I come in to that intersection, I come in from the south, and that's at the top of the screen. And as I look back to the west, I see the deputy parked behind a red car, which was a Honda Civic, and he's in his door jam, gun drawn, pointed towards the vehicle. So I pulled up behind him, get out, I approach him on the driver's side. My first thought, honestly, was that maybe it was a stolen vehicle. Honda Civic is a typical car stolen in Oklahoma City. So I approach him on the driver's side kind of to get more information about this traffic stop. And so when I get up there, I ask him, hey, is this a stolen car? And he advises me no, but he had attempted to pull the car over approximately a mile away from the location we were at. The car would not stop. So based on that, he just wanted somebody else there with him when he made the traffic stop. He believed the driver was driving under the influence, so that was the reason for his stop. So at that point, I go to his passenger side. We both have our guns drawn, pointed towards the vehicle. He starts giving commands for the driver to exit the vehicle. Driver's not exiting the vehicle. We can see him inside the car, and honestly, he just looks like he's sitting still, kind of like I am now, not really moving around in the vehicle, but also not getting out of the vehicle. So as the deputy continues to give him commands to exit the vehicle, I noticed two males, one 18, one 16, and a female approximately 40 years old, come out of the yellow and black house. And they come out of the house and make it into the yard. Before I can get their attention, they've made it about halfway into the yard, and they finally look at me and listen. And I tell them to stay back because they were trying to approach the Honda Civic. They complied, did so, stayed in the yard. The deputy continues his commands, and as he's doing that, I notice the older of the boys starts speaking in Spanish towards the vehicle. As he starts speaking in Spanish towards the vehicle, that's when the driver started having a reaction. So at that point, we realized he was translating for the deputy. So as he's translating, he has the driver get out of the vehicle, walk backwards, and then lay down in the grass. So as he lays down in the grass, we approach him. The deputy places him in handcuffs, stands him up. Driver is in fact intoxicated, so he places him under arrest for driving under the influence. As he is going to put him back in his patrol car, I approach the family at that point and make contact. And I started talking to the female initially because she was the older of the three. I could tell that she wasn't really understanding me, and she spoke broken English. So from that point on, I started talking to the two boys. They spoke both Spanish and English. And they informed me that the driver of the vehicle was their father, and that was his house. So evidently he was trying to make it home. But they also told us that he doesn't speak any English at all, so we wouldn't be able to converse with him. So from that point, I just started asking the boys, can you give me his name, his date of birth, any information that the deputy was going to need for the arrest. And they did so. They were very compliant, very polite. Really, the kind of feeling that I got from them was this was not a big shock that their dad was going to jail. And they didn't think anything of it, really. So after they gave me the information about their dad, I also asked them a little bit of information about the car, which they gave to me. And I passed it off to the deputy, and he went to check the driver and his system to see if he could find any information on him. As he's doing that, the boys start asking me questions. Hey, where's our dad going to go? Where's the car going to go? And so I'm telling him, it's not my arrest, but Oklahoma County's making the arrest, but your father's going to go to the Oklahoma County jail, and then kind of notified them where the car would be towed to and then how to get it out of the wrecker service. Again, stayed very polite, very cordial. The deputy then comes back to me and says, hey, I can't find anything on the driver in my system. Can you go back to your car and see if you all have any information, if Oklahoma City's ever had contact with this man? So I go and do that, and that's pretty much when I ended contact with the family. the deputy stayed up there and talked to him a little bit, and he was also doing his business to get ready to transport and for the car to be towed. So as I looked him up, I found out that he didn't have any warrants. He also did not have a valid driver's license. And then I looked him up in our history. It was Varuna at the time, but I looked him up in our search history, and it showed that Oklahoma City Police Department had a couple contacts with him, and that a couple of them were for domestics, and then we had also had a previous driving under the influence arrest. So I write that information down for the deputy. He comes back to my car. As he comes back and I hand the information over, he pretty much tells me that he's about to wrap up and that I was free to leave the scene. And I remember talking to him a little bit longer from there. But after I got done talking to him, he's like, hey, see you later. I'm going to head to the county. And so from there, I backed up and I started heading northbound on Miller. And as I was going down Miller, and Miller's the street, you can see there's a business on the southwest corner of Northwest 39th and Miller. And the parking lot of that business butted up to the backyards of the houses we were just in front of. So as I'm traveling down Miller, though, I'm kind of just playing out the rest of my night. I'm tired. I want the night to go by fast. So I remember thinking, hey, maybe I'll go do some traffic stops. Back in the day, that area was known for crack. So I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll go look to see if I can find any people that are using drugs or dealing drugs. Just all these things just kind of turning through my mind. As I get further enough to where I can see in the parking lot of that business, I remember seeing a subject, and what caught my eye is he had jumped as if I startled him. Well, it was very dimly lit because there was not very good lighting in that parking lot, plus the trees were kind of overgrown, so it's kind of shadowy back there. But I thought, well, based on his reaction and knowing that that business is closed at this time of night, I'm going to pull over and kind of see what this guy is doing, what he's up to. So if you can see my car parked there, that's where I pulled my car over to. And as soon as I got it pulled over in the car in park, but before I could get on the radio to tell dispatch what I was doing, or before I could open my door, I just remember the subject who had his back towards me when I initially saw him. Suddenly he turns on me, and when he does, I just see a long barrel coming away from his face, and he automatically starts shooting. So at that point, it's kind of a shock factor. You know, they say you freeze, flight, or fight. So initially I went into the freeze mode, like, is this really happening? Because I know as officers, we all know it can happen, but when it starts to take place, it's kind of a shock factor. And so I remember sitting there, and he's kind of out. If I'm here, he's out my window this way. And so I remember looking at him. Well, the next thing I think, I've got to get my gun out, and I've got to start shooting back at him. So as I go to get my gun out, at this point, he's walking towards my car, still continually shooting. And I remember I locked in on the muzzle flash. You say you get tunnel vision. Well, my tunnel vision was the muzzle flash of that gun, and it just looked like a huge ball of fire coming out of that end of that gun. And so as he's shooting, I'm getting my gun out. I'm also leaning over in my car because it looked like the barrel of the gun was pointed right at my head. So I finally, that's where my training kind of kicked in. I had a couple retentions on my holster. Don't remember undoing any of those. I just remember thinking I got to get my gun out and then just having it out. So once I get my gun out, I put it out the window and start automatically shooting back at him. As soon as I start shooting back at him, if you can see that stockade fence, he starts running down that stockade fence and then just disappears into the backyard of where the yellow and black house is. So at that point, I stopped shooting as soon as he disappeared, but I realized I'm kind of getting my faculties about me, and I realized I've been shot at least once because I can feel a tingling sensation going down my left leg. So I grab the car radio and I make a radio call to dispatch telling them where I'm at, that I'd been shot, and that I needed medical personnel immediately. Unbeknownst to me, that radio traffic never went out. Either a bullet struck my radio or there was an officer in the area at the same time, and he actually heard the gunshots. He got on the radio, and he may have just got on before I did, saying, dispatch, I've heard shots fired or maybe fireworks, and he was telling his partner to come, check it out with him. So me thinking that radio calls went out, my next thought was, okay, I've got to get out of this car and take off running and see if I can catch this guy. Maybe if I can't catch him, maybe I can at least see where the last place he went. And my partners that are coming, we can set up a perimeter, lock him in, and eventually find him. So I get the car door open, go to take off running. And as I do, it feels like I just have huge bricks on my feet. As much as I'm telling my legs to go, my legs are not cooperating, not going. So at that point, I realize, okay, I'm not going to be able to run after this guy. So I start listening to the background noise, thinking I'm going to hear sirens welling towards me. And if panic hadn't already set in, this is kind of where panic set in for me, because it was this eerie silence. I heard nothing, and I was thinking, why are they not coming? And so at that point, I realized, okay, make another radio call. So I got my handheld radio off my belt, called into dispatch. Dispatch came back to me and said, yes, go ahead. And so I made the same radio call, told them where I was at, suspect was running, and that I'd been shot. At that point, I knew they were on the way. So I remember sitting there by my car door. And during that silence, that rush of getting out, I'd lost so much blood already that I started getting dizzy. And I remember, I didn't know if I'd been shot in the head or face, but I remember feeling blood just coming down my face, and I was getting real faint. And I remember thinking, if I pass out and hit this ground, I may never wake up again. So for that split second, I was kind of questioning my mortality of whether this was the end for me or not. At that point, I remember hearing the neighbor down the street where the traffic stop had been going on. He was on a corner, one of the neighbors, citizens in the neighborhood. And he calls down to me, said, hey, are you okay? And I remember yelling at him, no, but I didn't have the energy to talk anymore. And he's, okay, I'm calling 911, which that was kind of humorous after the fact. But I remember thinking in my head, hey, guy, I have a direct line to 911. I pretty much just called him. But nice guy. He actually ended up calling 911. I don't have that radio traffic, but I was told it was pretty comical. But he was a very nice guy. He actually gets the deputy's attention. The deputy was still out front on the traffic stop. The deputy heard the shots being fired, really didn't know where they were coming from. And so he got himself and the wrecker driver down. And so that citizen got his attention, said, hey, she's hurt around the corner. At the point that he starts coming to me, my partners are actually showing up as well. I am by the car door, the open car door of my car. At one point, I had tried to make it around because my thought pattern was, okay, if he comes back out of that fence, I need to have something in between me and him to protect me, a barrier. Before I could make it around, though, my partners had showed up, and they walked me over to the grass line, laid me down, started taking my shirt off, my vest, checking me for injuries, plugging up wounds to stop the bleeding. And so as they're doing this, it's very, as you can imagine, it's commotion going on everywhere, but they're trying to get me to focus. I kept on trying to roll my eyes back in the back of my head, trying to pass out, but they kept on saying, okay, Katie, can you give us a suspect description? And I felt horrible because I really couldn't. All I could see was in my mind, it was a male, and he was tall and thin and had dark clothing, but that's really all they had to go off of. So by the time fire showed up, they started treating me. IMSA, which is our medical professionals, they showed up. They put me back in the back of an ambulance and then shipped me off to OU Medical. So based on the limited knowledge they had of who the suspect was, they just started basically setting up a perimeter a couple blocks in each direction and randomly started searching the area. We had 4 canines on duty that night. All 4 got on the ground with their dogs to search for the suspect. Of course, we had the helicopter up as well. And so then they started canvassing the area, talking to the citizens about what was going on, if they saw or heard anything. Well, when they started showing up, those 3 family members had been outside, the female and the 2 boys. They were still outside on that traffic stop. And so they put them in the back seat of cars and were questioning them basically as witnesses to see if they saw or heard anything. And they were also talking to the neighbors. Well, on the screen, you'll see that white house. They talked to that citizen that lived in that house, and they said, hey, did you see or hear anything? And that gentleman said, well, when I heard the shots being fired, I looked out my back window. I could tell it was at the back of my property. So I went out and looked out the back of the window, and I saw a subject running through the backyard of the next door neighbor's house, the black and yellow house. He said he ran through that backyard, and then he ran in that house. So the thought at the time was that the suspect of the shooting ran into these people's house while they were out front on the traffic stop. So They called for on-duty TAC team members, got some TAC team members together, went in the house, cleared the house, did not find any suspects in the house, but they did find a magazine to an AR-15 inside the house. So at that point, they realized that the people they put in the back of the car as witnesses were probably going to be their suspects. And so to kind of condense this story, though, I'll kind of shorten it and tell you kind of how things played out. Based on an FBI interview they did with the suspect, I'm going to tell you that version. So when they interviewed Hector, the suspect, he was one of the boys that was outside on the traffic stop. And him and his little brother, Alex, after they found out that their dad was going to go to jail, their dad was an illegal immigrant, had already been deported once, and they knew he was going to be deported again if he went to the Oklahoma County Jail. So at the point that I was in my car looking up the information and handing it off to the deputy, those two had went inside the house. The older boy retrieved an AR-15, went out the back of his house, and in his own words, he was going to come around the side and to the front of the house. He was going to ambush the deputy and I, kill us both, and then get his dad out of the vehicle. So as he got the gun, he went into that parking lot. That's where he was preparing the gun. He never knew I left the scene, so that was his startled reaction. When he saw me, he didn't expect to see me, so it startled him. At that point, he had the gun ready to go, so he just turned on me and automatically started firing at me. He was able to get 26 rounds off. 23 of those hit my car. 6 of those hit me. The first round I think I received was the one that went across my right cheek and through my right ear. And the only reason I say that is because originally I was looking head on at him. From there, I got, and it's hard to see, but I got hit center mass up front and then on the left side of my back. Those 2 rounds actually penetrated the car first before they hit my vest. And so my vest was able to catch those rounds. So he was shooting an AR-15 223 round. My vest was not originally made to take that head on. It would have came through my vest, but since those rounds came through the car first, my vest was able to catch those rounds. Then got hit twice in my left butt cheek and once in my right calf. And that's kind of how the shooting played out. And I'll kind of go into the story as far as going to the hospital, staying in the hospital, my recovery time. But we're short on time. I usually give more information about that, but I'll go straight into that. So ended up spending 3 days in the hospital. Miraculously, it didn't hit any major bones or any major organs. And so after 3 days, I think they were tired of everybody showing up at the hospital. And so they wanted to kick me out so they could get back to business as usual. And so I actually had to go home to my mother's house. I lived alone at the time, but I had to go to my mother's house. She kept care of me, continuous care. Why I couldn't take care of myself. I had home health care coming out every day, checking me for a while, treating my wounds, and basically was off for a total of 4 months recovering from my injuries. I didn't live with my mother that whole time. For a couple of months, I did have to, though. And so this portion I actually go into, I will tell you, was probably the hardest part for me. The actual shooting was one thing. And actually, you know what? I forgot about sharing the video. I'm going to stop on that, the recovery. I'm going to share this video with you. It will walk you through the shooting, kind of give you a visual. Keep in mind, this is a reenactment. I had a chance of going to Washington, D.C. and getting an award. And within doing that, they did a reenactment. So they have their own drama in there. They have this girl dropping, rolling, shooting. I didn't do any of that. So I was on my feet the whole time, in my car shooting, and then on my feet when I got out. But I'll go ahead and play that so you'll have a good visual of kind of how this took place. So that's just going to be the aerial view kind of from the helicopter the next day when they were getting the aerial view. That's, of course, where my car was parked, where I'd pulled over. And then this is going to be the reenactment video.
It started as a quiet patrol on the streets of Oklahoma City for Officer Katie Lawson. It was just after 10:30 on August 29th when she responded to a dispatch call to back up a deputy on a seemingly routine traffic stop.
And I assisted him in arresting the suspect and placing him in the back of his patrol car.
The driver was ID'd as 42-year-old Hector Mercado. He didn't speak English, and his family was helping translate on the scene. Mercado was in handcuffs. Officer Lawson was cleared to leave.
After I left the Oklahoma County Deputy Officer at Northwest 38, I drove north on Miller here. When I got to this approximate location, I noticed the subject, and he noticed me at the same time I noticed him. He jumped as if I had startled him.
The man was a relative of Hector Mercado's and was out for revenge.
His initial spot was approximately 60 feet away from my patrol car. As he started firing at me, that is when I got my weapon out and started firing back at him. At some point, he advanced on me to approximately 20 feet away from my patrol car, and I can't really see him. All I'm seeing is his flash from the gun. So I just started shooting in the direction of the muzzle flash. I was getting hit with metal and bullet fragments and shrapnel. Just didn't realize the severity that it would not allow me to physically run.
Now this is going to be the actual radio traffic from that night.
What do you need on?
One backwards and then
Kids are outdoors. Final letter. It's pretty complete.
So this will just go through several shots of my car, kind of where some of the rounds entered my vehicle and the trajectory of the rounds. What I was explaining to you earlier, the little blood trail trying to make it around the car, that's kind of why that blood trail leads to the front of the car. Some of my shell casings, I forgot to mention this, unfortunately, some of mine did catch him trailed him down the fence line, but they did not hit him. That's one round that went in the driver's headrest. Two that probably flew over me went in the passenger side headrest. One that came through the top of the vehicle, so that parking lot was kind of on an upper incline from my car, so he's shooting at a downward angle. My vest and my shirt. I always say what you don't see there are my pants. They tried to cut those off of me, but I stopped them real quick because I was still in my right mind. This is just kind of a sketch showing where the shooter started shooting and where the round entered my car from the distance he shot at. Some of the vehicles that showed up, again, 4 canines showed up. And it's going to show a short news clip real quick, and then it's going to show my injuries, and I'll stop the video after that.
These 3 family members are all in jail, each one charged with shooting and trying to kill an Oklahoma City police officer. Good evening, I'm Jessica Campbell.
I'm Paul Folger. Police say they fired the shots after another family member was arrested for drunk driving. Eyewitness News Mr. Holloway live with a late-breaking update.
The shooting happened at 10:20 Sunday night. Oklahoma City police officer Katie Lawson had just helped sheriff's deputies with a DUI arrest. When Officer Lawson headed north on Miller, she ran into something unexpected.
She was approached by an individual from the west who opened fire into the officer's car. There were multiple rounds fired into the officer's car. The officer was struck multiple times. She was able to get out of her car and return fire.
The 27-year-old was shot multiple times and survived. police say she's lucky to be alive.
Officer Lawson has been with the department for 4 years. She's in the OU Medical Center right now, listed in good condition. She's had so many visitors from friends and fellow officers that the hospital staff has asked them to stop visiting and let her get some rest tonight.
They didn't listen, which is okay because I was on morphine at that point. It was kind of like a party for me in there. So the blood you see on the left side, that was just shrapnel. It hit me. The right side, of course, is the one that grazed my cheek and went through my ear. That is more fragments and shrapnel that had went in my left leg. That's the round that was stopped by my vest. So basically it just burned off the top layer of skin. That's the one on my back, kind of did the same thing. And then that's my calf. Went through the little small hole and exited the big hole. All right. I'm going to stop sharing at that point, at this point. But that's, oh, sorry. Okay, I'm back. Can y'all hear me still? Good, okay, good deal. Okay, so that's just a little, kind of gives you a visual of what took place. As I was saying earlier before I showed that, so that was just an aspect, the actual shooting part. For me, the hardest part was actually the recovery part. And I say that because, you know, we all get in our daily routines, and that's where I was at in life. You know, working third shift, I would get up, I would eat, go work out, go to work, come home, sleep, do it all over again. And so I was a very independent person, was used to doing things on my own. And so this basically took all my independence away. I was a fairly new officer, as I said, and we have our department is roughly 1,600 employees, 1,200 sworn and about 400 non-sworn. And so you really didn't know your chiefs at that point, at a young age that I was when the shooting took place. And so I had all the chiefs calling me, the deputy chiefs, the chief calling me, and which is a good thing. They should. Your organizations, the chiefs should definitely check on their people. But I was getting so overwhelmed with calls, text messages, talking to command, hoping I'm not saying the wrong thing. And so that time in my life felt very chaotic. And not only that, the chaos part of it, also had the media trying to get in touch with me. Our department did a great job in handling them and just basically telling them, hey, she doesn't want to do an interview. But they're very sneaky and they find out your phone numbers. And so they would call me and don't know how they got my phone number. And one day I just remember them saying, hey, we're headed to your house to do an interview. And I was thinking, no, you're not. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not answering that door. And so that was all very overwhelming. But one of the big things that started taking place during that time, that recovery time, and mind you, the way that I deal with stress, and I know this now, is through working out. So that was taken away from me. I didn't have that outlet of working out to decrease my stress because I couldn't. And so I had a lot of time on my hands to think about things. And that's where I became my own worst enemy. So during the nighttime, I wasn't having nightmares, still have never had a nightmare about this, have never had a flashback about this during sleep. But my pain was so bad that I couldn't sleep very well. If I sat still for too long, I started getting uncomfortable and I couldn't sleep. And so I'd be up at night and I would be just picking this apart on myself and thinking, you know, you should have shot him. And I remember telling this to a couple of friends, a couple of close friends I had on the department, like, hey, I feel bad, man. I feel like a failure. I didn't shoot this guy. And they're like, Katie, you were shot. It was a moving target, and trying to rationalize it with me, but it didn't help me. It didn't work. And so I remember just beating myself up continually about that. And I didn't let very many people know about that. But internally, I was being my own worst enemy. And so as it got closer to coming back, they did put me back light duty for 2 months. And so as it got closer to me coming back full duty, I'd already let people know, hey, I want to come back to patrol. You know, I want to go to the same shift, same district. I want everything to stay the same, because the big point for me was I didn't want the evil acts of somebody else changing my course in life. If somebody chose a different route, wouldn't look down upon them, but I had to prove to myself that I could still be a police officer and not have that wonder of, can I still do this job? am I cut out for it? So it was very important to me to make it back. Well, that's where a very wise man, he was our chaplain at the time, came in, and he said, Katie, have you ever been to see a counselor, and would you mind going to see a counselor about this? And I had never, when we came into the police academy, they didn't tell us about counselors. They didn't tell us that that was a thing. The only thing I really knew about counselors is from school. Those were the people in school you went to see if you were sick, or if you're getting married, you go to marriage counseling, premarital counseling. But I had enough respect for this man to say, hey, you know what? Yes, I will go see a counselor. If you want me to, I'll go do it. Ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me. So went to see a counselor. She did EMDR. I don't have a whole lot of time to go through what that is, but eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Basically, in layman terms, it takes a memory or a thought that's stuck at the forefront of your mind and files it away into the area where it's appropriate. And they do that by bilateral stimulation. And so it's working both sides of your brain at the same time to where it can file that memory away. It takes away that negative emotion that memory once caused. You'll never forget the thought or the memory. It just files it away to where it doesn't cause that negative emotion. So helped me tremendously. Was able to go back to work. Haven't had any trouble since, kind of nervousness going back. And my big thing about going back was the thing I was nervous most about is somebody going to pull a cell phone out and I'm going to overreact and shoot this person. Never had that problem. But everything's been well. And this incident led me into where I'm at now. And I'm making this a short version. But in 2020, our department created the wellness unit, and people were asking me if I was going to put in. I really wasn't sure I was going to put in. I was having a great time doing what I was doing. I was working in Impact, which is kind of a narcotics unit. And so, but my thought is the more I prayed about it, because honestly, I give the glory to God for still being here. He obviously saved my life that night. And so I started praying about it, and I felt this overwhelming feeling saying, you need to go be part of the wellness unit. So ended up putting in for it and got it. So that's where I am today. I've been here since 2020. And the big reason I wanted to come in is to give back. So many people poured into me and gave to me during that time. I wanted to give back to others. So that is what got me here. So this story basically in a nutshell is about, one, being prepared. As officers, we always have to be prepared, both physically and mentally. That mental state of things is top priority, being mentally tough. And just be ready to fight for our lives in a matter of seconds and never to give up. But also it's about resiliency and being able to bounce back from life circumstances that seem totally overwhelming at first. And I think we got to have that mindset. We're all going to face adversity, whether it be in our personal lives, our professional lives. But when that adversity hits us, to keep that positive mindset and try to fight back and come back from it. So that is my story in a nutshell. If you have any questions or have anything for me, please ask.
Katie, thank you so much. What a powerful story. And I, again, have been talking about your story for so long. And so it's great to hear it right from your mouth. So as we turn some time over to Keith real quick, I just want to ask you a question. A lot of times we hear people say, that they don't wear their vest, or it's too hot, or it doesn't fit, those type of things. Tell us a little bit about the importance of vest wear after you went through this incident, your body armor.
Oh, first of all, it was policy. We always have to wear ours here at Oklahoma City, but I will never go out without mine. Even I'm part of the honor guard. Most likely you're never going to get a shooting in the honor guard, hopefully, but going to funerals. But I always wear my vest still because you just never know where the moment's going to take you and what you're going to get into. And so having that extra layer of safety, I don't know why somebody wouldn't put it on.
I just want to add to that, Scott. And I, as I think about and listening to Katie's story, first of all, just thank you so much for sharing it, Katie. It hits home to so many of our listeners as well. We've all been to the academy, we've all been on the road and heard, and if not experienced, some of these horrific situations. 15 years ago, things were different. Not just technology, I just think policy, right? And when I say policy, I mean, look at now, most agencies now have adopted the external vest carrier, allowing officers to have some flexibility with taking it on and off in the station in a safe place. allowing them to breathe a little bit. It also allows for additional layers of protection with those vests. And I know at least our deputies and myself, our cars are equipped with not only the external carriers, but we have the active shooter vest involved as well. So another layer of protection.
Yep.
And I think that agencies have now just leaned into the ballistic protection for most of our frontline officers and even firefighters. I'm starting to see firefighters carrying vests too. So any first responder is at the edge of dealing with these incidents. So, I mean, and that's not technology. That's just like, hey, what's common sense? How can we provide additional layers? And I looked at your police vehicle. I was going to ask the question, but I think the obvious, Captain Obvious, is some of those Crown Vics, and we do all miss the Crown Vics, were equipped with some ballistic paneling, and depending on your city and budget and what have you. So I think that's always a miss too. And you know, look at the potential save alone with those rounds coming through your door. So it's just something I observed as you were sharing the video.
So yes, ours at the time did not have the ballistic panels, but because of my shooting, we got the ballistic panels afterwards. So all the cars now do have ballistic panels in them.
Yeah. So those are some observations.
Katie, could you take just a minute here? You know, after the incident, I think a lot of people miss the opportunities that you talk about, you know, of getting a life coach or getting, you know, seeing a counselor. You know, they go through the shooting, and at least when I started in law enforcement, it was seen as a sign of weakness if you needed a counselor. You know, you just sort of sucked it up and went out there and did the job. Thankfully, as Keith said, the job has changed over the last 15 years, which is awesome, in that we recognize that is a sign of strength, reaching out for help when you've been through a critical incident like this or any other critical incident. You know, we see things in law enforcement that humans should never have to see or process. And so could you just talk a little bit about, you know, your time in the wellness unit? What advice would you give to officers that have been through a critical incident and maybe they're not struggling, maybe everything's fine, or to those that are struggling, what are some things that they can do? I love your faith-based journey. I love the physical fitness piece of it. I use that myself. But what are some things that you would recommend to officers that they can do to try to ease the challenges that they've dealt with?
Well, one thing that, and we did do it periodically back then, but one thing I recommend for officers to start with is to attend a debrief. We'll always give a debrief about the incident. And so that is beneficial for not only that officer, but the officers that went through the incident with he or she. It kind of gives a big picture, puts puzzle pieces together, and it normalizes feelings like this is maybe how I'm feeling, or this is the reactions I've had to this shooting. And so they get to hear that from other people who went through this incident with them. And so that's the first thing I recommend is, hey, come be a part of this debrief. We're going to talk about the incident. Yes, we're going to talk about, you know, if we've had any adverse reactions or, you know, the mental and emotional state of it as well. But it's going to allow us all to come together and tell our side of the story. And then we always just follow up. Hey, if, you know, feeling like a certain way about this or having issues with it, first 30 days may be okay. But if you continue to have those problems 60, 90 days down the road, then it might be time to seek professional help. And that's, again, not a sign of weakness, but there's something that's blocking you from going to the next stage of getting better from this. And so don't be afraid if you get that far down the road and you're still feeling that way, hey, let's get professional help. And then the big thing is just to keep a positive mindset. You know, this was a bad thing that happened, but there was way more positive that came out of it than negative. And so just to focus on the positive, one, in my situation, I'm still here, I'm still alive. I'm still here with my own family. And so to focus on the positives of the situation instead of all the negatives of the situation, I think it gives you a better mindset and helps you to be more resilient. And so those are just a couple of the things. Yes, sir.
And I just had a question. I know not a question, just a comment. I know there's a couple great questions waiting in the comment section, which we're going to ask. But I just want to add to Scott, you know, one of the things that came out of a recent officer-involved shooting here, where we lost Bradley Redlin last year, the community was in an uproar around what can be done, what can we do, and I love the fact our sheriff took the stance of, get out and make public safety counseling and psychological support a health. We need on-staff professionals 24/7 on our team. We want that type of we want the budget to offer those professionals to come and be with a part of our agency. And just happy to report, since Bradley's involved shooting, we now have 2 full-time staffers that's what they do. They're there to rotate our different substations. They're there to help us. And they're just, it's not just, what would you call it? A service dog, so to speak, to be there and calm you and be around. It's actually human. It's able to pull you aside, joke with you, laugh with you, cry with you. And it's been a tremendous asset to our department. So ask for those services. It's really helpful.
Yes.
Perfect. Keith, I want to turn a little bit of time over to you. We'll get to these questions in just a minute, but I know, you have been to a critical incident. You responded to an active shooter in one of your schools. How do you, the same question to you that I asked to Katie and whatever else you wanted to talk about, how do you handle, dealing with it, after that critical incident? What have been some positive things for you and how you've dealt with those?
For me, and I was thinking as Katie was speaking, post-event, stress de-escalation, it was mandatory. We had over 300 deputies show up at our event. And it was mandatory for even the other agencies and those responding from personal vehicles or what have you. We all met for days afterwards, required by the sheriff office to come together and talk about it, cry, get upset. And it was really helpful for us. And it would just allow everybody to be human. And to do those big, large group settings, it was actually better than actually coming in and out of a private door somewhere to see, like, is Keith handling it differently than Mike and what have you. But and it was surprisingly that everybody just dealt with it differently, in terms of their how they're decompressing from the incident. But I will say that, that was probably the best outcome for me, is just to see everybody going through it together. And even in Katie's situation, Katie was clearly a victim here, but there's a lot of people that arrived on that scene that, even as a responding officer, is going through an emotional situation right now, because we all know when that call comes over the air or you're walking into those situations, the most important thing at that time is our partners. And so you're freaking out, I'm sure, of what they came on to see Katie. And, for us, one of the things that I've been blessed to have the privilege to doing is working with agencies around the country and talking about how, like Katie, your situation happened 15 years ago. My situation of our active shooter at the high school happened roughly 4 years ago. And even our agency has advanced so much in terms of how do we offer better situational awareness tools, whether it's wearables to understand people's, health biometric, baseline situation, whether you use it as a personal individual, just from your own health reasons and your own health goals, or if you're using it in a professional setting, like some of our SWAT team members or other team members that we've seen is, I see you, you see me. Situational awareness doesn't have to be over the radio. It just has to be a visual, like a dot or a representation on the map. One of the things that also rung a bell when you were speaking was the English Spanish translation challenge. I think technology has come a long way where mobile technology allows a bridge to communicate with people using mobile technology. So I just, we've done this before where we've talked to other officers that had similar situations. And one thing that resonates with me is the advancement of technology to help for our safety, whether it's additional vest layers, technology at our fingertips, whether it's a mobile phone. If your agency is not using any type of, just not vehicle location, we all have used Life 360 or Find Me and Locate Me. I know agencies that they don't have an agency policy on locating each other for their mobile devices, but the Deep Nights crew, the crew that's out there, that they want to be seen, so they have their crew members or their team members open up location-based sharing on their phone. They do what they can to make sure that their location is always seen, whether it's on the computer screen or whether it's on their mobile devices. Because I mean, at a moment's notice, regardless if you're have close backup or backup far away, your location is critical to your partners coming there and responding to you. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Katie, your story is tremendous, but we have some great comments in here, and I want to make sure we get to those.
Yeah, thank you, Keith, for sharing your story as well. Katie, so we have a couple of questions, and the first question is here. It says, during your recovery, what was the least helpful or most detrimental thing that others did that, hang on just a second, it popped up here, that others did while trying to assist you? Any thoughts on that?
Everybody on the department is great, even though I was overwhelmed. And that was just me putting that on my personal self, thinking I had to get back to everybody. I had to text everybody back. I had to call everybody back, had to email everybody back. So they really weren't putting that on me. Probably the most detrimental thing was going through the workers' comp system. I had trouble with that at first. And, they told me physical therapy, I could do it on my own at home, which my injuries was not going to allow me to get better for doing it at home by myself. And so that was probably the worst part of it for me, and the least helpful. But as soon as I just got to applaud my department, as soon as they found out about it, they actually stepped in and started working with city HR to get me a different case manager, an OJI doctor. So if I had to pinpoint one thing, that was probably it.
Perfect. This other one is a really good question. It says, is there something that you would have liked to see different from your command staff during your recovery? And I think a lot of times when you're in a command position, whether the chief, the deputy chief, whatever it is, we do things that maybe aren't helpful. Can you talk about that? Was there things that you would have liked to have seen, things that were done well, things that were done not so well? What are your thoughts on that?
I actually think they did a really good job as far as contacting. So I would recommend, even though that did stress me out, and that's only because I was new 4 years, it's not normal talking to the chiefs. You don't just see them every day.
Right.
But as an older officer now, having 19 years on, and where I work now, that is the most appropriate thing to do, to reach out to that person, make contact with them, check on their family. And so they did all those things. So even though it was overwhelming to me, I do think that the command staff did a good job by doing that.
Perfect. This next one is not really a question, it's more of a statement, but I think it's worth reading. It says, thank you, Katie, to you for sharing your experiences. You did a great job of succinctly explaining EMDR to everyone. He says, I'm old, retired 10 months ago as the chief of our department, but had some very similar experiences early in my career. I was shot along with a fellow officer who was killed in 1997. When I had been on for about 4 years, I also struggled with chronic pain and nerve damage from the bullet wound and had great experience with EMDR. I was fortunate to be able to help start our department's peer support team in 2007 and found great satisfaction in helping others in similar circumstances. And he says, thanks for what you're doing and how you're handling the aftermath of this critical incident. Do you want to take just a couple of minutes? We've got about 5 minutes left, and just talk about EMDR a little bit in more detail and how it's benefited you.
Okay. Again, the way I did it, and I think back then, they do it several different ways now, but it's basically you go in to see a counselor, they set you down and you're talking, and they have you follow at the time it was fingers, they move them back and forth in front of your face, and you're supposed to follow them with your eyes, talk a little bit, follow them, talk a little bit, and so on. So I'll tell you, the first time I did it, I thought, this lady's doing SFSTs on me. What is this? How is this supposed to help anybody? And now they have to where you can hold little vibrating nodes and it'll vibrate off and on in each hand, or they have lights or the tapping each side. So there's different ways they do it now. But basically, again, as I said, it's supposed to mimic REM sleep. So they say when you're in REM sleep, that's when your brain kind of processes what you've been through throughout the day. And it helps you to your mind to process those things when you're in REM sleep. Well, a bunch of us in law enforcement or in our career fields, we don't get a lot of REM sleep. And so this kind of mimics that to help that, the bilateral stimulation of your brain to file those memories away to where they are supposed to be. And so it doesn't create that negative emotion. Again, when they did it, I didn't leave out of there thinking, oh, this is a miracle. I think this worked. Honestly, I left out of there thinking, did that do anything? But as time went on and I kept on going to a couple more sessions, then I realized that negative emotion I had about not shooting the suspect, it was getting less and less, and I was able to digest it and not worry and maybe accept it that, hey, this is the way it played out. Not the exact way I would have it to play out, but I've got to accept that. And it stopped creating that negative emotion within me. And so, and based on, other things came up during it. It wasn't just the shooting, but it was helping my brain to process those things to where I wasn't anxious as much, or I didn't feel negative about a certain thing. And so that is my layman's way of telling you how it worked and how it worked for me. But it wasn't this aha moment like this is a miracle. It was basically over time that I could see that it was changing my maybe attitude or my behaviors or my thoughts.
Well, thank you so much. I want to give both of you just a second to give us some closing thoughts, but I want to say, Katie, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're super busy doing what you do, and I appreciate you telling your story. You're making a difference. I know people that are listening to this and people that will listen to this recording will find, I think, hope in that after you've been involved in a critical incident, there is peace and there is, help out there. And so, again, heroic what you did on scene, but heroic what you're doing each and every day to make a difference in law enforcement for those that are following behind you. So, Keith, I'll just turn it over to you for a second, for some closing thoughts, and we'll turn it over to Katie after that, and then we'll close things out.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much again, Katie, and our audience for being so engaged. It's so important to have this dialogue back and forth because of Katie's experience, and obviously with many of those who are attending his experience. And I guess through my observation is this is a profession that thrives on collaboration and experience. There's a ton of book work at the academy level as our new recruits come into this role. And that's just what it is. It's just book work until you get out here and gain experience and knowledge. And we start to embrace the tools that I think innovation has given us, whether it's a textile, like something that prevents us to have a bullet wound, or it's technology to help us understand where our people are, our most valuable resources. Whether it's camera systems that can help immediately maybe locate a suspect, and just a couple months ago we had a crime analyst on this conversation, and the use of just thinking differently how we pursue I'd say the knuckleheads, the bad guys that are out there. There's a lot of data to decompress, and I'm sure that with the help of your amazing detectives with your agency, Katie, and their experience and the community that comes together to help locate and resolve some of these crimes. A lot of people think when they watch TV, and as so many people know, that the police do solve crimes, but it takes a community and a village to help track down and to put together the unknown pieces. So my final comment is for your agencies and your listeners, think of technology as a force multiplier. In this case, you had, a survivor, Katie. Your agency has adopted tools like ballistic doors from your incident. Just something of that simple that came out of your story that can save lives. And it's, of course, just a foot stomp. The importance of getting help after the incident is so important, and it's important to do so. So thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, Keith. Katie, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you all for having me. Thank you for those that tuned in. I appreciate you listening to me and let me share my story.
Well, again, thank you. And thank you to Samsung for making this possible. And again, I want to put my below 100 hat on. We are at historic low levels, and I think we can get there to reduce line of duty deaths to below 100. It'll be the first time that it's happened in a century. And our 5 core tenets of below 100 are wear your belt, wear your vest, and Katie talked about that today. Watch your speed, win, what's important now, and complacency kills. So think about those tenets as you're out there doing the job. And again, we can reduce line of duty deaths and injuries. So thank you to everyone. Be safe out there. If you want to see this recording, you can visit our website at publicsafetyinsight.com, and we'll get this recording up in the next couple of days. So thank you to everyone. Be safe out there.